The White House says it's focused on the long-term health of the economy and markets, not short-term volatility. So what will be the impact of their bold economic strategy? I'm Veronica Dudo. Let's find out.
This is In America Today from the Ticker News Studios in New York City.
At his second inauguration, President Donald Trump pledged to lead America into a new golden age. According to the latest Consumer Price Index report, inflation is ticking up slightly, with prices rising 2.8% over the past year. This fresh economic data is raising questions about the road ahead as the Federal Reserve prepares for a key policy meeting next week. With interest rates expected to remain steady, economists are closely watching how inflation and the labor market will shape future decisions. Meanwhile, President Trump's new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China are sparking concerns about a potential economic slowdown in the short term, while some experts say the moves are needed for long-term success. Here's President Trump discussing the possibility of a transition period for the country.
I've only been here,
but are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. But I think it should be great for us. I mean, I think it should be great. It's going to be great ultimately for the farmer.
For more, I'm joined by Darren Marble, the executive producer of Going Public. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Veronica. It's great to be back here with you.
So first, we saw these latest inflation numbers. How do they compare to previous months, and what does this signal about the economy?
Well, look, I think we need to first take a step back and look at the macro picture. And the macro picture is that Donald Trump was elected with a mandate by the American people for a 4-year term. So it's, I think, unfair for people to judge what's happening on a day-to-day basis. He's been in office since late January. We're here in March. But let's dive into what's happening here. Inflation is actually down from January. January, the rate was about 3% year over year. It eased slightly to 2.8%. So I think that was actually some positive news. The concern, however, that a lot of consumers and economists have is that the next few months look to be quite uncertain. And so we're about to see what we're going to get into.
Now, with prices rising 2.8% annually, is inflation still a major concern for the average American consumer?
I think it's the number one concern for the average American consumer. I think the average American voted for Donald Trump because they looked at their pocketbook and they realized they were actually worse off under the Biden administration. And so they voted for change. So I think consumers are absolutely sensitive to inflation, and they want to see lower prices. They want to see lower egg prices, gas prices, mortgage rates, so they can lower their monthly payments. But I do agree with what Trump is saying. We're entering a new era. It's really a protectionist era. Trump wants to bring America back to greatness. He wants to ultimately lower prices through major changes. And really, he's trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So, a lot of the uncertainty, a lot of the rises in costs that we're seeing right now are due to this, Trump tariffs with China, with the Canada and Mexico, who are two of our most important trading partners. And the way these tariffs work is they actually impact the importers. So a 25% tariff on Canadian goods means the U.S. companies that import goods from Canada pay a higher price. And then that increased price gets passed down to consumers. But ultimately, I think long-term, there's an opportunity. We just have to let this plan play out. It's a 4-year term, and we're really trying to bring manufacturing back into the United States. But I think for average Americans, they are concerned. They don't want to see prices rise in the short term.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent just said that the White House is more focused on the long-term health of the economy and markets, not short-term volatility. What do you think about his latest comments?
Well, I think that's correct. And again, you see a lot of concern relative to what's happening right now in the markets. And what's happening now is, a week or two back, the Dow is down 600 points. The S&P lost $4 trillion of value since its high. NASDAQ is down. And that is a very scary thing for everyday Americans, retail investors who are looking at their retirement accounts, their 401ks, and they're seeing it's down, down, down. So on the one hand, if you are a believer in America, which I am, now is maybe a buying opportunity. This is maybe a buying opportunity because you believe in the long-term power of this country. But if you really believe in this country, I think what Americans should be considering is actually investing into alternatives, alternatives being private markets. It's really hard for everyday Americans to create wealth investing in the stock market. And it's scary when you see your portfolio, your 401k is down 5 or 10% over 2 or 3 months. I mean, that's extraordinarily difficult to fathom. But I think Americans should be looking to alternatives, private markets. That's where there's tremendous upside. And if you look at SpaceX, for example, the early investors in SpaceX earned a 100x return before that company, on its way up to a $350 billion valuation and higher. And so that's really the part of the market, Veronica, that I think is the most exciting for everyday Americans right now.
The Federal Reserve is expected to keep interest rates steady. How does this impact inflation, businesses, and borrowers?
Well, look, I think there's a Fed meeting in the next 2 weeks here, and I don't know that they're going to lower interest rates. I think they're going to wait to see what happens over the next few months. Without a doubt, there has been some questions about the erratic moves of the Trump tariff policies, making these big announcements, 20% more tariffs on China, 25% tariffs for the US and Canada, and then kind of dialing back as Trump saw the real-time impact on the markets there. So, I think people are looking for some kind of stability in this market, and I think they're going to have to wait it out for a bit.
And just looking for potentially what some economic indicators should be for Americans, what should they be watching for in the coming months to kind of gauge the strength of the economy?
Well, look, I think the average American is looking at their retirement. They're looking at their income, their wages. They're looking at their retirement. Right now, they're seeing NASDAQ, the S&P, Dow Jones is down. So what I think Americans should be doing is looking into private markets investments. And, I'm a producer of a show called Going Public. It's a show where we follow the stories of founders building businesses, raising capital, and viewers can actually invest in exciting startups in real time as they watch this show. Our next season, season 3 of Going Public, is actually being streamed on X, formerly Twitter, the platform owned by Musk, with 600 million monthly active users. We think this is a very exciting way to bring this new wave of alternative investment opportunities to everyday Americans that might be a little reticent to be putting their money into the stock market when they're just seeing red across the board when they log into their Robinhood account or they log into their Charles Schwab account. And they're not going to generate 5x, 10x returns investing in the stock market right now. So I think Americans should really be thinking longer term about the opportunity to get into earlier stage companies where there's certainly more risk, right? Startups fail quite often, but there's massive, tremendous upside. That's really where there's an exciting new opportunity for everyday Americans to create real wealth.
Darren Marble from Going Public, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was great being back with you.
This is Ticker. We'll be right back.